So sunflower is an unusual crop because sunflower breeders have been using the crop wild relatives to source useful traits since formalized breeding began in sunflowers in the early 1900s. Sunflower as a crop was developed in Russia and Ukraine, so it was domesticated in North America, but crop development took place in Europe. The first European settlers to North America observed Helianthus domesticated sunflower growing in the Native Americans' gardens and thought it was amazing. Although it wasn't a major food crop at that time. So seeds made their way back to Europe. Europeans had never seen a plant like that before. And sunflower was established by the mid-1500s in various botanic gardens around Europe. And from there, just spread around. And by the early 1800s, people recognized the value of the oil in the seeds. And by the early 1800s, farmers in Russia were growing acres and acres of sunflower to produce oil from the seeds. So in addition to the domesticated sunflower growing, a number of the wild species were taken back to Europe. For example, Helianthus tuberosus, for which there was some interest in the tubers as a possible food source. But mostly it ended up being an invasive weed in the waterways across Europe and was growing in the area where sunflower was being grown in Russia and the Ukraine. And the farmers observed that the tuberosus was resistant, almost immune to a lot of the pests that were affecting the sunflower crop, including Orobanche cumana, which is actually a parasitic plant that establishes itself on the roots of the sunflower crop and can totally decimate entire fields just across a region so that the farmers get no yield from their crop. Tuberosus was immune to this pest, and the breeders were able to incorporate resistance to Orobanche into the crop from tuberosus, providing decades of strong tolerance to the disease. Call it a disease, it's actually a parasitic plant. That initial resistance has broken down over time, but other wild species have provided similar tolerance to Orobanche cumana. So in addition, which is a really important disease in a problem in Europe, parts of Africa, now in China, doesn't occur in the United States, fortunately, even though the native plants here provide the resistance to it. Other disease resistances and tolerances have been provided by wild species for rust, for downy mildew, and Phytophthora, other diseases. In addition to Helianthus annuus has provided some drought tolerance for the crop. Probably, though, the most important commercial trait that's been provided from a crop wild relative of sunflower is that for cytoplasmic male sterility, which was obtained from Helianthus petiolaris, collected around the St. Louis area. This CMS, cytoplasmic male sterile trait, allowed for the development of sunflower as a hybrid crop, exponentially increasing its value. In addition to sunflower being used for oil and as a snack food and as birdseed, there is an ornamental industry. And the red ray flowers that you see in some of the ornamental varieties, that red color was sourced into the cultivated plants from one wild Helianthus annuus plant that was collected near Boulder, Colorado in 1910.